And it goes on. They want to put all of your public assets into land trusts so that they are protected into perpetuity, taking land off the market so that Americans cannot own land. That is the goal.
I want to say thank you to all you great Americans for taking time out of your Saturday to be here. I want to also extend a thank you to Paul and the other chairs for putting this event on. I want to acknowledge one gentleman here that did not stand up, but he has spent 12 years serving in the Oklahoma State Senate, and that is Senator Mark Allen, and he's here with his wife, Nikki. Thank you for coming. Ms. Perry, I want to thank you for singing the national anthem and Sergeant Major for leading the pledge. Hooah. And I want to tell you that I thank God that I am an American, and I hope you do too. This country has her problems, but she is still the greatest country on the face of the earth. Amen. Amen is right. It is my honor today to introduce you to Dr. Julianne Romanello. Today's presentation is vital if you believe God when he said, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge." God also said that his people had willfully refused this knowledge. How similar to today. Dr. Romanello earned her undergraduate degree from the University of Tulsa in 2003, and she earned her doctorate from Baylor University in 2012 in the field of political philosophy. She has extensive knowledge and expertise in ancient Greek philosophy, existential and 20th century philosophy, and general questions pertaining to the history of political theory. So be careful if you decide to debate her. She has taught at the University of Tulsa, Northeastern State University, and Tulsa Community College. Her courses have covered topics ranging from philosophy, educational philosophy, and political theory to humanities and American federal government. Strangely, for one so steeped in philosophy, she is a born-again follower of Jesus Christ. And it is by his grace and for his glory that she pursues this endeavor that you will hear today. She is also a wife, a mother of 4, and you'll be pleasantly surprised to know that she does not get paid at all for going around the state and delivering her presentation and educating the great Americans of the state of Oklahoma. I'll warn you that today you're going to have your brain turned on. I have seen Dr. Romanello present before, and this is not a show, it is a class. It is a absolutely good and vital and necessary class for any true patriot, and like anything worth doing, it doesn't come easy. But Dr. Romanello does a fantastic job of connecting the dots. And if you've ever had an uneasy feeling when you hear terms like public-private partnerships, sustainability, smart cities, clean energy, human capital management, economic development, and a host of other buzzwords, your discernment is spot on. After today, you will know exactly why these things make you feel uneasy. And if you're still not motivated, let me remind you that there are still almost 400 Americans in prison because they went to our Capitol on January 6th to protest a stolen election and a soft coup. Da Vinci said it like this: "It is easier to resist at the beginning than at the end." Samuel Adams said this, and this is particularly apropos to today's presentation: "If ye love wealth better than liberty, the tranquility of servitude better than the animating contest of freedom, go home from us in peace. We ask not your counsels or your arms. Crouch down and lick the hands which feed you. May your change set lightly upon you, and may posterity forget that ye were our countrymen. And with that, Dr. Romanello, the floor is yours.
Thank you all so much for coming. Let me get this just a little bit closer because I often hear that I have a soft voice. I feel like I'm yelling, but people in the room tell me otherwise. So I'd like to thank everyone who has put this event together. It takes a lot of boots on the ground. It takes a lot of courage and heart, and I am so appreciative for this. Is it? We can't hear you. It's still, we're still having trouble with the volume. Is there, how is this? If I get really close? There you go. Yep, okay, right here. Just wave at me if I need to move this. Okay, so I want to thank you all for coming, thank the organizers, thank Senator Hamilton for that very flattering introduction. You know, I'm going to talk about some very difficult things today, and it is, you know, it sounds dark, but I have to say that it's encouraging to have this conversation in the state of Oklahoma, because for let's say probably 2 years or so, I've been going around and doing these talks, and we always have a very large audience. We have people in Oklahoma who understand that something is wrong, and they genuinely want to get the full picture and to do more about it. So I think of all the states in the union, we are really in a wonderful place to fight back against the dark things that I'm going to try to explain to you today. So I would say take heart, and thank you for spending this Saturday morning with me and with your fellow countrymen. So I will go through some of this very quickly, or I'll try to, and I will make the slides available to you through the GOP chairs, or someone here who has organized this event can make these available so that you can go back through and look at the information that's on the screen. You will not be able to read all of it, but I like to give you evidence. And so I've taken screenshots from many documents just so that you can see that I have evidence to back up my case. If you can't read it, that's all right. So with those disclaimers in play, let me try to explain what we're going to talk about today. Okay, so the title of my talk is Exposing the Federal Land Grab and Smart Cities. Let me see. Oh, I don't have that up there. And smart cities for digital management of the economy. So I'm going to try to tie together two different aspects of what's going on with a program that you might know as the Great Reset. Who here has heard of the Great Reset? Probably everyone. Okay, so that's what we're dealing with. It's Sustainable Development. It's Agenda 21. What I'm going to look at is how the 30 by 30 federal land grab, which really is on the radar of people who live in smaller towns and counties that have agricultural bases, that program is absolutely and totally related to the urban program of smart city development. So, you know, I live in Tulsa, and we are becoming a smart city. Oklahoma City is a cognitive city, which is even worse than a smart city. So our two major cities in Oklahoma, along with others like Edmond, Bartlesville, and so on, these areas you might think, oh yeah, they are already too far gone. They're not worth saving. But here in the rural areas and the small towns, we're okay. I have heard that many times. I'm here to tell you that that is not true. So the land grab, the 30 by 30 program, which tries to appropriate private lands into the service of the Great Reset, it is absolutely tied to the smart city program of measuring and managing and monetizing your life so that your life looks like you know, the people's lives in China with social credit scoring and so on. So I'll start with the 30 by 30 land grab, kind of move toward going over this economic program that is the Great Reset, and then get into the smart cities. And I hope that we'll have some time for questions because there's just so much to talk about. Okay, so first off, the federal land grab is, you can read the report. It's called America the Beautiful. It was laid out by President Biden in an executive order, and its main tenet is that the U.S. should aim to conserve at least 30% of our lands and water by 2030. So when you read this program, it is couched in the flowery language of protecting our natural resources, cultural heritage, ecotourism, you know, hunting and fishing, things like that. And it's also couched in the language of needing to promote economic development and growth and opportunities for business in the future. But that is absolutely the language of the United Nations Sustainable Development Agenda. So what you'll see is that in this blue box that I have down at the bottom, I just took a quote from the report, the America the Beautiful report, and it says, "A renewed national commitment to land and water conservation can and must strive to honor the needs and priorities of all communities in America, help address the climate crisis, and help to strengthen the foundation of the nation's economy." Okay, that would not trigger most people, right? It sounds just sort of like regular speak that you would hear in any government report, right? But this is actually very important because we are introduced to the twin pillars of sustainable development, and that is managing resources, so protecting the environment, conserving resources, and promoting economic growth. Those are the two pillars of the Sustainable Development Agenda, which is the Great Reset, and as I'll show you. You will also see the language of you know, needing to address the priorities of all communities of, you know, all communities in America. No one left behind. So you can, just from this initial slide, you can see that language. And what I'd like you to do is remember that the Great Reset, or Agenda 21, is a communitarian program. That's the ideology behind it. And it operates by balancing individual rights with the common good. Now that really appeals to Christians because we want to love our neighbors as ourselves, right? But that has been done on purpose in a very sneaky way as a stepping stone to divest you of all of your rights. So when you see the talk of balancing those two things, conservation and economy, you can almost be sure that you are dealing with a New World Order program. Okay, so takeaway is that if you're balancing economy and environment, most likely you have a New World Order program. Oops. You know, I'm not very good with technology. I think I skipped one and I'm not sure how I go back. Oops. Okay. No, I didn't skip one. Okay. I apologize for that. So the Biden-Harris administration's America the Beautiful initiative, again, this I just want to give you some evidence. It talks about collective capacity. That's a buzzword. Anytime you see collective capacity, you're probably dealing with a New World Order program. And you can see our prosperity to bind us as one people. That's one world order. And it's going to be sold to us as a way also to protect the potential for economic growth. So you can just sort of read through this and, and see that it's about balancing. Okay, What I'd like to propose to you is that the federal land grab that's outlined in the America the Beautiful report is not really a federal program at all. It's a globalist program. Okay, so our federal government has been, it's been co-opted. It has been part of a merger and acquisition by a criminal syndicate, a corporate criminal syndicate. And they are running the show right now, not according to the rules of the Constitution and statutory law, but according to the a sort of mafioso might makes right paradigm. And it is a globalist paradigm. So we are dealing with a land grab that is, not just coming from Washington, but this is coming from multinational corporations, from other governments in the world, and so on. So you can see this COP15 ends with Landmark Biodiversity Agreement. This was a conference of the parties that is part of the United Nations Environmental Program. They held a conference in, get this, it was hosted in Canada and chaired by China, right? This is right in our faces. And in the framework for the protection of biodiversity was agreed to at that meeting, and that is the basis of the 30 by 30 land grab. So in my red square, if you can see it, it says, the plan includes concrete measures to halt and reverse nature loss, including putting 30% of the planet and 30% of degraded ecosystems under protection by 2030. So that's the exact goal that's going on in the 30 by 30 America the Beautiful program. So this is a global program. Oops. Alrighty. The land grab also is not, it's not a public land grab. So we have to think about this. It's, it's not federal, it's global, it's not public, it is private. Everything that, our instincts might tell us, well, this is government taking our rights. Well, it is sort of that, but actually government itself is being privatized. So I can't go into all of the details about how this works, but for your understanding and so that you can fight back effectively, we need to understand that really our governments have been sort of put into the service of private corporations, and they are redesigning an economy that's going to put financial incentives in place for private landowners to join into the 30 by 30 program. So I have a report here. It's from Utah State and the Center for Growth and Opportunity. This is one of those think tanks that spends tons of money pumping out propaganda and presenting it to your Economic Development Council, your Chamber of Commerce, and so on. They issue a report and said, making private lands count for conservation, policy improvements toward 3030. And it is about the key to Biden's program being to enroll private landowners in the program. So you can, in what I have here, it says we need an additional 440 million acres to be conserved. That is on top of all of the federal reserve lands. So if we want to meet the 30 by 30 goal, you have to have an area enrolled in the 30 by 30 program that is over 4 times the size of California. So this is the rewilding program, if you've heard of that. It is to really stack and pack people into urban centers, smart cities, and to take many public nature lands out of commission for any kind of human activity whatsoever, right? To make real estate prices skyrocket so that really what our civic life looks like, what our potential for owning real estate looks like, or just having a home. Look at China or at Hong Kong and their cage houses. That's what they're doing here. Okay, but they have to have private landowners to do this. So they're going to use financial incentives of all sorts to get private landowners to preserve the public interest. So there's your balancing in communitarianism again, is that you have to have private people using their property, or really giving away their property, to protect the common good. So again, the key to Biden's 30 by 30 is private land. Efforts to conserve 30% of American lands by 2030 will need to fully engage private landowners in order to get positive outcomes for the environment. This is especially true for wildlife and endangered species that rely on private land for their habitat. Fortunately, policy tools already exist to help provide incentives for landowners to make their land more hospitable to endangered species. So if you look at all of the, let's just call it what it is, propaganda that is coming out of the think tanks, they are looking at endangered species, biodiversity, and water supplies, and they're saying, okay, most of those resources are tethered to private lands. So that's why private lands have to be targeted. So if you own land, you're going to be offered all kinds of incentives to enroll in federal or state level conservation programs. And they sound like a good idea because, at first they always do. You get a carrot before you get a stick. So you might get tax credits for, signing an easement or a protective order that says that you can't have certain types of hunting on your land, or you can't have certain types of development. Those sorts of carrots will get many people involved, but then there will be sticks, okay? And that's just around the corner, because this is a global program backed by tons and tons of money that we can't even imagine. So one of the tools that they use is conservation banking. And this is that if you own land, you get so many credits for the number of species that live on the land, or the type of biological diversity that's there. And this works essentially like a cap and trade system does in the energy sector. And if you know anything about that, it is a terrible system that's designed not to work at all for its explicit or even implicit purpose. It's just to funnel taxpayer monies into the hands of the mafia. So now they're going to do it with land, and you can trade species credits, and they're absolutely doing it. The federal land grab also is not simply about land, but it is more importantly about, well, we could say water. And it could have its own presentation. But let's just talk about the real meat of it, and that is the data. So the federal land grab is a data grab. Now this is important because we are moving into an entirely new financial system, a new economy that's based on trading data and trading behavioral outcomes that can be tracked through sophisticated data gathering instruments. So, you have to understand that this land grab is part of that larger economic reset, and I'll show you that depends on trading data. Well, right here, this is a selection from the America the Beautiful initiative, and it says measuring progress for nature and people. There in the second paragraph, it says, there's no single metric, including a percentage target, that could fully measure progress toward the fulfillment of those interrelated goals. Similarly, there's no single database that could capture the texture and nuance of the economic and social values of every restoration or conservation action. So this is saying, it's very hard to get all the data that we need, but they're going to try. And how are they going to do that? It is through Fourth Industrial Revolution technologies. These are super high-tech advancements in biosensors, tracking and tracing, surveillance, things that, just blow every sci-fi movie that you've seen out of the water. But you know, some of you, if you're a rancher, you probably know about the USDA databases for tracking beef, and you know, you've seen, if you're just a regular person and you go to the grocery store and they talk about farm to table tracking and tracing for organic produce. This is actually just about tracking every single resource and where it goes all the time, which is really about tracking your consumption of those resources. So the land grab is about measuring every resource in nature and your consumption of it. And it is about taking private lands and enrolling them into an agenda that is a communist agenda. And it's also about selling off public assets like municipal lands to corporations, economic development corporations, so that they can be more efficiently managed. Well, that actually takes away our control over those areas. So we're going to see a vast privatization, because why? The financial system is being set up such that private entities can reap these financial rewards for signing on to the program. I know it's pretty dense, huh? So why are we seeing this global privatized, data-driven push from the Fed? Well, it's because the federal government, like every national government in the world, has signed on to the Agenda 21 program. They signed the Paris Agreement in 2015, but back in 1974, I have this little screenshot, we signed on to the UN resolution to create the new international economic order. There's a declaration on the establishment of the new international economic order. So I always like to joke, Bill Clinton said, "It's the economy, stupid," right? It actually was, if you remember that. Like, what's wrong with the world? How do we fix things? It's the economy. So we're seeing, I think, in red states, when you see this huge push for the pride movement and, basically pornography and public schools, and we're seeing this all over the news, and we're seeing that our red state is being targeted for that kind of depraved reform, or however you want to describe that. I don't even know. I think that is in order to distract us from the economic war that is going on right now against the American people. So it is absolutely terrible to think of what is going on in this social moral sphere with the pride garbage. But it is a major distraction, because people who are conservative, who are Christian, our first instinct is to protect our kids from that garbage. So then we are not paying any attention to the economic, the tools of economic totalitarianism. But we have been enrolled in the new international economic order for a long time. They're proceeding quite quickly. NAFTA was part of this. And that new economic order is about measuring and managing resources. Now, your comprehensive plans for your county, for your city, any of those plans are the mode for implementing the new international economic order where you are. So Oklahoma is implementing the UN Sustainable Development Program through what? I didn't vote for that. Through your comprehensive plan. So it's worth just reiterating, and I gave you a handout that has this slide on it. The sustainable development is the Great Reset, and it has two prongs. I mean, you can sort of rearrange these, but there is the economic growth prong, and then there is the environmental resource management prong. And under the economic prong is this sort of social inclusion, and that's where we're going to get a lot of talk of values, and ultimately social credit scoring falls under that category. But whenever you see these buzzwords that I have at the bottom, managed growth, balancing values, for the future, prosperity for all, protect and preserve, common vision, you know you are dealing with a New World Order program. Every time. And I looked at some of the plans for your counties, and it's all over. And it's the same as what our plan is in Tulsa. It's the same as what the plan is in Edmond. It's the same as what the plan is in Chattanooga, Tennessee, or New South Wales, Australia. All the same language. So if you know that and can recognize it, you don't even have to understand it, but you can know that you need to steer clear of that initiative, whatever it is. And many representatives or public officials have no idea what these words mean, because it takes a long time to figure it out. And they're busy trying to, respond to constituents and take care of real problems. So they haven't had the time to look through and find out what these seemingly innocuous words mean. But this is what they mean. Anytime you see this language, start to notice it and then say, we can't do that. Okay, so the new economic order, new international economic order, is about data being the new oil. You've probably heard that phrase. Data is the new oil. It's the information about human behavior that's really valuable. Marketing, customer insights, all of these, research firms and Nielsen ratings. All of that is grabbing data so that, or for what? It's so that, corporations can sell us more garbage, right? The more data they have on our habits, the more effectively they can change our behavior, either to purchase their item or just to act in a way that it serves whatever interest that company promotes or that government promotes or agency or whatever. But we're moving toward this new data-driven economy, and what are the tools for getting there? Well, it is a smart city. And what is a smart city? This is a selection from the 2016 UN Economic and Social Council report. And a smart city is, a smart sustainable city is an innovative city that uses ICTs, that's information and communications technologies, and other means to improve quality of life, buzzword, efficiency of urban operation and services, and competitiveness, buzzwords, while ensuring that it meets the needs of present and future generations, buzzword, with respect to economic, social, and environmental aspects. So your econ, social, environmental. This is, you've heard of the ESG push on the corporate level, ESG. That's exactly what this is. So what a smart city does is uses surveillance, all of your wireless broadband, all of the cameras, whether they're publicly owned or privately owned, all of the microphones, the LiDAR, everything that's going up in your traffic signals, it is all collecting data that is going to be fed into an AI system that will measure and manage your life. I'm from Fort Smith, Arkansas, and when I go to my hometown, you can see the surveillance infrastructure rolling out everywhere. I mean, it looks like a gulag. But that's what it's for, right? Smart infrastructure provides the foundation of all the key themes related to a smart city, including smart people, smart mobility. This is your car. They want to take it away. Smart economy, that is, you're going to get UBI, that's Universal Basic Income, which is basically credits at the company store. Smart living, your home will be monitored for Scope 3 emissions. That's your indirect emissions. So your employer is going to track what you do at home and how committed you are to the reduction of carbon emissions. Smart governance, that is that AI will govern our municipalities. and smart environment. So access to natural resources, including land, will be managed by an automated system, not a person that we can argue with or reason with. But you know, when you're on the phone with someone and it's saying, press 1 for this, you know, it makes me want to throw the phone across the room. This is going to be government. And I live in Tulsa. They are already automating government, okay? So some people might say, well, the Great Reset, smart cities, that's just for those terrible metropolitan areas like Tulsa and Oklahoma City, right? I'm going to escape to the smaller towns. And when I did a talk in Claremore, everyone, you know, there were lots of people in Rogers County who were like, get these city people away. They keep coming out here and they're messing us up. You know, maybe you felt that too. Anyway, you know, I remind them, well, no, there is absolutely no difference between the rural areas and the urban areas. Now, for our purposes, rural just means anything that's not a major city. So if you're a bedroom community, you count as rural. If you are, you know, really an unincorporated township, you're rural. Anything that is not, you know, like a Tulsa or Dallas or so on, that is rural when I use that term. And you can see here, this is a paper from the UN, Reset the Rural, Reset for Sustainable Development. Let me check our time. Okay, so they have published many, many documents that talk about how you implement the reset in rural areas. You do it through public administration, agricultural land productivity, access to land, conservation, farming practices, and so on. A lot of the themes of this paper, this is a UN paper on the rural reset, are incorporating technology into traditional or, you know, conventional agricultural practices. So using databases to track and trace the resources, using sensor technology for hazard mitigation. So all your buffer zones, especially related to water, these will be tracked and traced with, you know, sophisticated sensor technologies, and those will provide the data that will enable the AI or, you know, just the police to come and stop you from using those areas or accessing them. The goal is to use technology to generate rural economic growth. So you're going to hear this line, oh, well, we have to incorporate these new technologies if we want any possibility of economic growth. Well, I would say that that's just a lie, you know, but that's how it will be sold. And people are credulous, and we all want to do well and provide for our families, so they'll sign up for these kind of innovations. But the goal really under the reset is to connect the rural and urban economies. Now, if you know that this is a part of a rewilding project where we're going to be stacked and packed into smart cities, then think of this. You do not want to be connected to Tulsa. Why? Because you'll be connected for just long enough for all of your resources to be sucked dry, and then you're going to be stacked and packed into Tulsa too. It's happening. I mean, if you look at just how the pandemic has affected growth and development in the Tulsa metro area, well, everyone wanted to get out of Tulsa because it was tyrannical, so they moved to the suburbs, Jenks, Broken Arrow, which are all surveillance hubs. They are little Tulsas. There is absolutely no difference. Same money's going in. Now people have moved out there, so the giant developers, BlackRock and so on, can buy up Tulsa land on the cheap. And then what's going to happen to those smaller communities, Jenks, Broken Arrow? They're going to be forced back in. Okay, so when this talks about connecting rural and urban economies, the more of your land that they take, the closer you are to being stacked and packed into a smart city. It's just how it is. So your city plan is going to talk about rural character, the character of place, protecting, you know, what is it, the blue whale in the Port of Catoosa, that's in Rogers County, you know, and they say, we've got to protect this little area. No, 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 no. They say that so that they can put in their regulations, but then you're going to be stacked and packed into Tulsa or Oklahoma City or wherever it is closest by. If you can just Google the Fourth Industrial Revolution and you can get an idea of what kinds of technologies are out there. This is the high-tech program that's going to be the basis of the smart city technologies. And they talk about it's a fusion of technologies blurring the lines between the physical, digital, and biological spheres. So this is really where you get to the point of never being able to leave your phone, always having to use a digital interface to do any kind of interaction or access public service. It's all right there. You can look, you don't have to use the deep web. And that is part of the economy. So I'm going to sort of speed up because I want to get to the McAlester City Plan. But just know that the people who have designed this great reset, the Davos crew and the banking cartel, they know that the massive automation of the 4IR is going to lead to unemployment. And people will be starving for work, so they will sign up for all of the track and trace human capital scoring that's offered to them by their employers who want to track ESG ratings. They just know people are going to be backed up against the wall. So think about the rollout of all of the surveillance technologies in that context. The land of the free, the home of the brave. Maybe people are going to want to, oppose this system. Well, as this surveillance program runs out, which is justified in terms of, gathering market insights, protecting people's safety, hazard mitigation, we got to stop the tornadoes and the droughts and all of this. That's how it's sold to us. Just know that there are going to be many, many people with no work. And how do you control those people? Is something to think about. Okay, so I'm going to skip a couple of these because this is just more evidence, but I think you can get the picture. What is a smart city? Here's just another nice, tidy definition. A smart city uses information and communication technology to improve operational efficiency, share information with the public, and provide a better quality of government service and citizen welfare. You'll see this in your city plan. This is government through AI. These are the Sustainable Development Goals, and I'll give you this slide that, later after the presentation, and you can see particularly how it relates to rural development. So what I want to just skip to quickly, and this goes to the Smart City Agenda, is a policy of transit-oriented development. Now, the land grab, that sort of applies to the rural lands, agricultural areas. Well, transit-oriented development is the urban analog. So we're seeing in Tulsa and Oklahoma City, every major city, they're implementing a policy of transit-oriented development. McAlester is implementing transit-oriented development. I looked through your plan, you've got it all over. This is the land grab in the city. And it works by, is a type of urban development that clusters jobs, housing, services, and amenities around public transport hubs. It's compact, mixed use, and pedestrian and cycle friendly. Those are all buzzwords. When you see them, steer clear. So a city's transit-oriented development vision unites transportation planning and land use planning. And what they're going to do is they're going to drive property values around transport hubs way up. And it's going to increase the tax burden of the landowners in those areas. So they're going to, if they're not a major institutional holding firm, they might be forced to sell. And then who comes in? BlackRock, and they develop it. There's a policy called land value capture that's going to pay for public transportation, which is going to be forced on you so that you can give up your car in the name of protecting the planet. If you look Tulsa's plan, it's all right there. Now, This is about the financing of it, and this slide is important. This is from C40 Cities, which is Bloomberg funded, and George Kaiser, who's in Tulsa, many of you know who he is. He's an investment partner with Michael Bloomberg, and tons of Bloomberg money is in Oklahoma funding all sorts of garbage. So C40 is a Bloomberg organization, and they talk about what is transit-oriented development, and how do you sell it to a public that doesn't want it? You say, oh, 15-minute cities, right? So you've probably seen a YouTube video that talks about 15-minute cities, and you might think, this is not happening here. That won't happen in America. We have our guns. Let me tell you, it's happening here. And the 15-minute city doesn't just mean that you can go 15 minutes from your house. It means that all of your amenities will be located within a quarter to half-mile radius from your house. And all those cameras are going to measure, are you walking farther beyond that? And just quickly, the bankers are setting up financial markets so that they can speculate on the possibility of you complying with New World Order moral requirements or not. So this is called social impact investing, and they are going to make big bets on your behavior. Did people leave their zone? Did they not? Are the emissions going down? Are they not? Are we committed to diversity, equity, inclusion, or are we not? They're going to make bets on that. So that's why they want to track and trace it. So complete neighborhoods, remember that phrase. It's all 15-minute city. Okay, so just let me try to do this quickly because I know I've thrown a ton at you, and I'm sure everyone's hungry, but I just wanted to look at the McAlester reset because I had to pick somebody. And your plan is really terrible. I'm not sure how much the taxpayers paid for this, but I'm sure that it was siphoned off to some fancy consulting firm, and the taxpayers are the ones who really lose out, okay? You have moving McAlester forward. That is always a buzzword. And let me just, I have a quote from one of the city planners, and she talks about this is a collaboration toward a prosperous, healthy, and resilient city. Diversity of participants. We need an adaptable and livable city, quality of life for citizens in the future. All the buzz. Look at Tulsa's plan, same buzz. Look at everybody's plan, same buzz. Okay, so realizing the vision, this is from your table of contents. Land use, economic development, parks, recreation. That's how they're going to get your land, is parks and recreation. Privately owned public open spaces. POPOs. That's in your plan it has that acronym. I know, I'm like, how do you say it? POPOs? Anyway, privately owned public open spaces. Green spaces. The gathering place in Tulsa was a land grab, and people love it because it's a park. They sell the parks to you because they know that the public likes parks, but the parks and open spaces are part of the land grab, and they're filled with surveillance, and it is, again, privatizing those public assets so that the private owners, which are all stakeholder councils funded by big bankers like George Kaiser, they can make the financial returns off of carbon credits, biodiversity trading credits. Alrighty, you can see the logos, the gray and red, that is from the McAlester plan. It's just another version of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. What is a comprehensive plan? They tell you everything I've just told you. What is it? It's to strike a balance between land resources and development patterns for the community as a whole. Community protects public investments, protects valued resources, and it goes on. They want to put all of your public assets into land trusts so that they are protected into perpetuity, taking land off the market so that Americans cannot own land. That is the goal. Okay, so here your city plan talks about roadway conditions, and it says, oh, well, we can't fund these improvements, right? So we're going to have to look for other sources of funding, and oh, we're going to fall behind in economic growth, and everything's just going to fall to bits unless we do what? They're setting you up to look for this private financing, transit-oriented development, land value capture, where they use the potential of future revenues to justify present tax burdens to pay for the public infrastructure that's going to make it so that you have to give up your car and ride the bus or bike. Here's your, remember I told you to remember the phrase complete streets from the Bloomberg organization. Here's McAlester saying that they are going to implement complete street principles, multimodal, green design, and smart systems. We're almost done. So if you think it's not happening, it is. And it's every little town. It's Poto, it is Stigler, it's everywhere. Here's your future land use. They want you to have people living and working. You can walk to shopping, dining, and services. And they're going to conserve valuable natural resources. This is your 15-minute city. You should just read through the plan. It's online, and it's full of the language that will make your blood pressure go up. These are sections from it. So this is the end. The rural and urban digital management strategies are being implemented in Oklahoma, in every state in the union, in our country. What is the goal? It is to measure and manage all resources. Manage all resources. That means your consumption of them. Your access to a car, your access to food, your access to clean water. They're doing it through high technology systems, whether it's your smart meter for electricity or water, whether it is the license plate readers that are going up everywhere, whether it is your Ring camera that integrates with all sorts of apps that control the temperature of your house. What is this for? It is for the UN goal of 8.5 billion people in 2030 living dignified lives. What does a dignified life look like? E-health. If you're a doctor, know that you are going to be 4IR'd. That means you're going to be a victim of the 4IR. Everything is going to automation. The Zoom calls and telemedicine is all just training the AI, right? So e-health, e-learning, schools, they're going to go online. E-banking, e-commerce, there's your digital currency. I didn't have time to talk about the role of the tribes. That's going on here, especially in eastern Oklahoma and after McGirt. We have a lot of really interesting things in Oklahoma that are both, to use some New World Order type language, they are both risky for us, but they're also opportunities for us to fight back. So like I said at the beginning, I am encouraged to be here in this state, especially because people, when they hear this stuff, they get it. They might not get all the details, but they get the big picture. And if enough of us get it, then we can bring this into the public conversation and really force our public officials to act on our behalf, or the ones who are trying to act on our behalf, we can give them a public mandate and basis of support that they will definitely need if they're going to go up against the bankers and the Washington cartel. So I hope we can, I thank you for your generosity in bearing with me for this long presentation, and I hope we'll be able to get into some of the details in a Q&A if you're interested. Thank you so much.
I just have a quick question. We recently had an experience where my husband bought a motorcycle, and we put a motorcycle policy on it through our agent, and then the company wanted to know, of course they ask you, do you own your own home, do you rent, and all this. They want proof of home ownership. We built our own home. I told them, prove we don't own it.
Yeah, you know, the insurance companies, that is such a great point, because when you look at how sustainable development is sold, it's all about managing risk and managing liability. And if you notice, no one is willing to stand up against the tyranny that's rolling out through corporations, through our governments, through any entity. No one's willing to take it on because they are worried about the liability risk, right? So the model of keeping us under control has been developed and perfected by insurance companies, whether it's health insurance, life insurance, homeowners, whatever. What do? They get all the data that they can on your behavior, whether you own your own home, whether you have a regular bedtime, whether you eat, you know, chips all the time instead of vegetables. And that helps them to do what? Make big bets on your future outcomes. So look at Obamacare. What did it do? It introduced value-based health care, and looking at probabilities and determining whether or not you receive treatment based on the outcome that the data says you're going to have. So I think to your comment, we're going to see more and more of that, where if you want to do anything, if you want to, especially if you want to take out an insurance policy, you're going to be required to show tons and tons of data, and eventually it's going to be tied to having a digital ID, because we're moving toward a zero trust framework. I know this is a long, winding answer to a simple question, but if you have a smart city, like Tulsa is becoming the smart city, someone has to guard the smart city infrastructure. Someone has to control the cyber security systems that make the whole thing run. And they have to prevent hackers from joining in. So how are they going to do that? They're going to do that by requiring you to have a digital ID that proves who you are on the basis of your biometrics and all sorts of other things, just for you to access anything that is web-based. So, you know, when they're asking now for proof of home ownership, then they're going to ask for, well, prove to me that it's you. And you're going to have to do that for everything. So the digital ID is coming. Your future is offline. Really, the way that this is stopped is by taking that infrastructure out, the web-based infrastructure, because Web 2, which is what we're in right now, it is sort of optional still. Although you can't go to an Oklahoma State Park and park there paying your cash. I mean, I took the kids, sorry I get all fired up about it, but they want your $10 on an iPhone with a QR code. This is a state park. Yeah. It's just going to get worse and worse, and it's going to become Web3 is not optional. You will have to participate in it once it's fully rolled out. So
I tried to explain to the agent, I told him, I said, this is just a precursor to ESG, and I will not participate.
Exactly.
We built our home with cash. He says, well, can you provide tax records? I said, I can, but I will not.
Good for you.
So I'm hoping maybe someone will educate him.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make sure that that was what it appeared to be to me, that you agreed with that.
That's exactly it.
Okay.
I bumped us. Sorry. Am I off? Can you?
One of the resources is water. What about federal lakes?
You know,
Four brief questions.
so, okay, the question was about water and federal lakes. You know, there is a paper, I have not gotten into all the specifics of that, so I'm going to answer it in a sort of indirect way. But there is a paper that I found from, I think it was 2012. It's an academic paper, and there are many more like it, called, it's American Water Reset, and it is looking at, yes, it's from 2012, and they were already using that phrase, the reset. and I can send this to you. It's about reinventing federalism through water policy. So water is important because it touches many different ecosystems. It touches many different regions. It's fluid. And so, you know, if you think about how the climate crisis has been sold to us, you know, they sell it in terms of you know, a dire threat, an urgent threat, we're all going to die. Well, they have to make it a global threat because no one wants this rotten program. And so you have to pull it over everyone's eyes before anyone figures it out. So, you know, what they want to do is work in a way that is collective, that has the broadest reach. And, you know, land is a static thing, but water is not. So when you look at agreements about water usage and, you know, when we think about droughts and food supplies and things like that, you know, I think it becomes very clear that water policy is going to be a really important and under the radar way of taking control of everything.
Second question. Is this what happened to the farmers in the Netherlands?
The question was, you know, is this what happened to the farmers in the Netherlands? Yes,
Okay,
it is.
that's good. And then my final question is, do you feel like, I can't prove it, I've been looking, do you feel like our county seats are being targeted first?
Are the yes. I mean, yeah, county seats, you know, people are paying so much attention to what's happening in Washington that they are not paying attention to what is happening at the county level. And, you know, counties are so important because you have sheriffs, right? We hope constitutional sheriffs. But they also control this land use and roads, right? Mobility. And the two prongs of transit-oriented development are land use and transportation. So they're going to be targeted because one, no one goes to the meetings. You know, they can, you can find a county commissioner and who might have very good intentions and be liberty-minded, but they're busy, you know, and you just hand them a report from a fancy think tank that says you have to do this or you're going to miss out on all the great economic benefits that are going to come from Panasonic and Canoo and lithium battery plants, whatever. And maybe they just believe it. So yeah, so if we focus really at the local level and we support our, let's say, our rural county commissioners, constitutional sheriffs, then I think we have a chance. And also one other thing I'll just mention is that, you know, our resetters like to use a divide and conquer strategy. And I think they like to divide rural and urban areas. And so if we can get, I mean, I sort of have been a little bit in, I wouldn't say despair, but I've been a little down about how things are going in Tulsa because it is so obvious what's happening there, but we're still a little slow to act. I think the urban centers are going to be much slower to fight back against this, and we need the rural areas, both, you know, because you got solid people here who understand it, and you know, the moral conviction, I think, of the smaller towns and rural areas it's going to be needed to get the ball rolling, and then it's going to, I hope, bring some of the smarter, you know, more conscientious and principled city dwellers on board with extra resources. But I think we have to find a way to have a coalition between urban and rural areas in order to fight back and really to put, you know, we have to support our state governments, because what the Agenda 21 tries to do is get rid of states. You know, we're moving to a regional model where you have large mega regions and compacts of states, because our state constitutions actually give us important rights and ways of keeping the federal government in check. So I'm a firm supporter of our federal constitution. I love the document, you know? But right now it has been, you know, it's not working because we have criminals that are in office, in the DOJ and in every branch. You know, Supreme Court is no different. You know, people are there for a reason. So what do we have to do? I think we have to really support our states as states to push back against the criminality at the national level and force the government to recognize the rights that it is established to protect.
I just wanted to know how the Noahide laws play into all this. Is that just going to be part of the social credit score, or how is that, like, because, I mean, it's pretty ugly for believers.
Yeah, I mean, this is, the topic of Noahide law is really a complex subject. Let me try to do it in a, who here has heard of Noahide law? Just a handful, so I won't get into too much of it. Basically what it is it is a religious style of law. It's an innovation to our legal system that is based on following the precepts of the Jewish faith and the Old Testament tradition, and it establishes a sort of hierarchy of people who are of sorry, it's hard to go into this like on the spot because it is complex and it's also a sensitive issue. But it establishes sort of two tiers of people. One is a Jewish people, and the other is a compliant or righteous Gentile people. And if you look at what's gone on with Noahide law and the innovations behind it, in 1992, George Bush signed a public order about Noahide law. Kevin Stitt signed in 2022 a proclamation about Noahide law and recognizing Noahidism as foundational to our institutions in the U.S., okay? And I do think that that is rolling out. I mean, I think that it's going to be a while before we really see that for what it is, because the kinds of innovations that are in that law really have to deal with looking at a judicial model of governance, and really a kind of governance. It is government by judiciary on a sort of administrative or alternative justice model. So, sorry, this is, it's just such a complex topic that it's hard for me to just get onto it on the spot. But yes, if you are a Christian, I would strongly encourage you to do a little bit of research into what the Noahide law means, because there are rules against idolatry, and if you're a practicing Christian, then you count as an idolater. But that's pretty deep stuff that is, I think it is very important, but you know, you kind of have to figure out where public-private partnerships and laws and land use fit in to this greater reset, I think, before you can get into some of that. That's my personal opinion.
Can you spell that, please?
It's, which one? Sorry, this is a little, Noahide is Noahide. And it's tied to, you know, I mentioned the term communitarianism, which is actually a synthesis of communism and capitalism. And it was developed by a guy, Amitai Etzioni, who has advised every major president, I think, since Jimmy Carter. He recently died, I think it was last week, at the age of 94. And he is the father of communitarianism, and his work dovetails with the Noahide movement really closely. So, you know, in saying that I think we have to sort of understand this P3 relationship first, that's not to say that these are not related. They absolutely are related. But sort of just as a teacher, I think, you know, you kind of have steps to go through. But yes, definitely, if you already get the New World Order Great Reset, then move on to that and start learning. Sure. I mean, you know, like I mentioned, the question was about McGirt, and you know, the goal with this program, the global program of Agenda 21, is to get rid of states and move to a regional model. They want to have basically a federal government that operates on municipalities. These are going to be corporate-owned municipalities, so not so much like a town or city like you would think of it, but more like a company town. And so a ruling like McGirt, which changes the judicial status of a large swath of land, is a perfect tool for doing what? For starving the state of Oklahoma from tax revenue, of, you know, authority over certain matters, of judicial power. So it really was a huge boon to the resetters who want to get rid of states. And this is happening in many states across the country. You know, they didn't have the McGirt ruling, but the returning of lands to tribes and the push for tribal economic sovereignty. This is happening in Idaho, Montana, Oklahoma, and so on. These are coordinated efforts to use the tribes as tools of the NWO, of the New World Order. Why? Well, one thing I focused on, and it is such a big topic, and so I don't pretend to be an expert on it, but one reason is that the tribes have a different commercial code than the states. So you can do all sorts of innovative financing tools through the tribes that you cannot do through the traditional states. And if you look in South Carolina, there is a tribe there that has already set up a digital economic zone or a special economic zone, and there is a pilot program of U.S. Reserve federal CBDC digital currency that's rolling out in South Carolina. It's called the Fluent Token Protocol. And you know, the tribes, because of their commercial code and its different features, they can roll out CBDC more easily than states can. So, you know, one thing that, again, like I said, that resetters like to divide and conquer. And so if they can set up, you know, non-tribal U.S. citizens against tribal citizens, then they really have, you know, an edge on us. So I think just like we have to make these connections between rural and urban areas, we've got to work with the tribes, because every person that I've met, regular person from the tribes, they do not like these reforms at all, and they know that they're being used by the federal government and by prospecting philanthropists who are going to take advantage of their citizens. So, you know, maybe that is a place where we have a great opportunity to work with Cherokees, Choctaws, Chickasaw, and say, hey, this is not going to be good for your people, for our people. Let's fight it together. Yeah, I mean, I think that any handout that the government is offering right now is a trap. It is a trap. The economic development authority monies that are coming into the counties in the country, is a trap. Anything that is free. Now, I'm not exactly sure how this program worked, but you know, so I don't know if there are strings attached with the forgiveness of debt or if it's just about bankrupting the government, because there is an incentive to bankrupt the government. As you saw in that McAlester city plan, when they can say, oh, our road upgrades are not funded, then that opens the door for what? Private finance to come in and supply the missing monies to pay for obligations. So, you know, if you look at the public schools across the state, you know, Tulsa is a wreck, right? Why? It's because people have not funded the schools because they don't, you don't want to use taxpayer dollars to pay for pride stuff and all this garbage, right? But that has played into the project of defunding the state provisions for paying for public schools, so that people like George Kaiser and Bill Gates and all of these other grant makers can come in, give the grants. They're not accountable to voters because it's not tax dollars, and then they grab all the data. So it's the same model with the public schools. And you know, as conservatives, we tend to think, oh, well, we don't want to give the government any more money because they're the bad guys, right? Well, yes and no, because at least when taxpayer monies are paying for something, then we have the law on our side and can do audits. But when it's George Kaiser and private grants, then we get in trouble. When it's corporations, then we get in trouble because, you know, can you pressure your local politician or Amazon more effectively? You know, your neighbor here, you can pressure and you can say, look, this is a rotten law. But if you're stuck in the Amazon, I don't like my customer service, you're going to get stuck in the loop. And it's just going to get worse. So I would say, as conservative-minded people, we need to sort of be very savvy about how we think about taxes.
Where can we find, if our hometown has one of these goofy plans, where can we find that?
You know, where can you find the plan? I just use Google, and some of the smaller towns, like Podos was a little bit more difficult to find. You know, because maybe it's that the city's website hasn't been totally 4IR'd yet, but most of the time if you just type into Google McAlester Comprehensive Plan, you're going to find it, or Economic Development McAlester. And let me tell you, it's not just one plan. There are layers and layers of plans. So like in Tulsa, we have the Plan of Tulsa Comprehensive Plan, but we also have a mobility plan, an innovation plan, a da-da-da-da plan. So as soon as one fails, there's another waiting in the wings. That's why it's very important for you to know the language. And I have, I didn't show you the slide, but I'll make it available later somehow. I've got my top 10 buzzwords. And if you just know those, then you will know this is a New World Order plan. And people are going to think you're crazy. Oh, yeah, it's sustainable, like everyone uses that word. Resilient, da da da. You know, Julianne, you're making a mountain out of a molehill. No, you know, people are going to make fun of you at first, but once you start to see it, then you will have the knowledge to say, I want to steer clear of any of these plans. So whether it says comprehensive plan or mobility plan or workforce development plan, you will know it's a bad plan that's been developed by consultants who do not have your best interests in mind if it uses that language. Because none of us use that language. It's goofy.
Can you say those 10 words?
My top 10, I have to make sure I say the right ones because I really need another top 10, a second top 10. But here they are. This is, and you all have been so patient. So if anyone needs to leave, I will not be offended personally. Sustainable, resilient, equity, inclusive, innovative, collaboration, transparency, diversity, leadership, and impact. Those are my top 10. I would add prosperity for all, quality of life, preserve rural character, natural resources conservation. It goes on. I mean, I have lists of like 100 of these words. Yes.
Thank you.
Have I ever? Well, I have not directly, and immediately, but I have had conversations. So for example, at a meeting in Jenks, Oklahoma, I had the pleasure of meeting Wes Nofire, who was running for chief of the Cherokees, principal chief, and he seems like he knows all about what's going on. And so I made a social media post in support of him and know people from his campaign. But right now, I mean, I haven't done anything in particular besides that, like gone and talked to the tribes, but I want to. It's just a matter of time. And so we have to make those connections, certainly, because like I say, if there are opportunities that come from getting the tribes and then non-tribal members united in using every single tool that we have to fight the reset. Yes, sir, in the back. Yes. I forget the statute. Actually, Mindy has sent me a copy of that. But yes, there is state legislation that requires counties to have a comprehensive plan and to have a metropolitan planning association. So I think this would be an excellent way of just wiping out a bunch of this planning garbage, is to repeal that law at the state level. Thank you for mentioning that.
Do you know that number, that law?
Mindy, do you know the number for the statute that establishes that counties have to have MPOs? Title 19. Okay. Okay.
Title
Okay.
19 what? Sub what?
I don't know. It's hard for me to hear.
Subsection on that, Mindy?
Title 19, 866.1.
866.1. Yeah, so if we got that at the federal or at the state level, if you wipe out that statute, that would be a huge win. And I'll probably just take Polly's question, and then I'm not sure how long we have the room, but okay. So the resolution against the 30 by 30 land grab, after, we had a meeting in Claremore where we had at least 250 people, at least 200, we thought maybe 250. And I mean, it was packed. It was so wonderful. And they pressured their county commissioners, and they passed a resolution against the 30 by 30 land grab, and the Planning Commission agreed to postpone their vote on the comprehensive plan. So, twice. So these were huge wins. I mean, I say that they're huge wins because we had public action that was genuine grassroots action, not funded by philanthropy or private groups or anything else, just really active citizens who pressured their commissioners to do the right thing, and they did it. Now, not all the way, and the battle is not over, but it is an excellent start, and I think it should, I hope, be a source of momentum for people elsewhere in Oklahoma. If you could do this in Rogers County, which has something like, I want to say, I looked it up on Wikipedia, maybe it has like 90,000 people in the whole county, and we had 250 people at a meeting on a Monday night, and it's cold. Like, we have the people here in Oklahoma to fight back. It's just a matter of getting folks comfortable talking about it, because no one wants to look crazy and people are intimidated by the language. Well, you know what this program is. When I describe it to you, you might not have all of the details, right? But you know what it's about, most of you. So you don't have to know all of it. You just have to know enough, and be confident and trust your gut, and the more of us just are like that, the better off we'll be in terms of getting that active public resistance going.
We have two Rogers County people here tonight or this afternoon, right over there. We're talking about that.
Yes, well, it was, I mean, Rogers County, I was like jumping up and down. I told my husband, I was like, we won. I was like, let's move to Rogers County, right? I know, it's still a huge battle, but like, you know, the resetters work incrementally. You know, they have a long-term vision that they like to impose. So, you know, we're coming from behind, but we've got to, you know, give ourselves a pat on the back for working incrementally too, and try not to get too down about how long it's going to take. It took a long time to put this in place. It's going to take some time to probably to unwind it. Yes, ma'am. And this is probably, I don't know who is sort of in charge of our contract with the building or anything, but maybe I'll do one last question. Is that okay? I'm looking for someone to.
Yeah, we have plenty of time.
Okay.
I just wanted to say something real quick.
Holly was asking about the resolutions, and we actually have 14 counties who have signed resolutions.
That is
so
awesome.
I know there's some other people that are also working on it on
Yeah.
their end. So you guys are both, I'm hoping, going to meet in the middle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But they're already talking with Casey Murdoch to get legislation passed.
Awesome.
So I think you know who they are. Is it Sandy Bean and Linda?
Oh, yeah.
So they're working.
Yes.
I know they've been all around. You've been all around.
I know.
So I'm hoping between all of you guys that you will cover all the bases in all
Yes.
the counties. Is it on the QR code? Okay. So if you look on this paper right here, you can find a copy of the resolution. Just use your phone to go to the QR code. So you can talk to your county commissioners, walk it to them personally.
Okay.
Sherry's got something. Can I give it to her real quick?
Oh, yeah. So, thank you all very much.
Casey Murdoch, Senator Murdoch does have a bill that he actually ran this last year, and Senator Hamilton signed on to as well. So he's co-authored that. So that is there to stop the 30 by 30 land grab. That's with the Chisholm Trail and some of those things that are happening here in Oklahoma. But something that I read the last couple of weeks was about the Bureau of Land Management is trying to institute new rules to basically lock the public completely out of any federally owned lands. And so that's already coming in to try to keep the public completely out of those. So the idea that, well, this will be for hunting and all the recreation, that's not how that will work. They're already trying to keep the public out. And the other thing is the waters of the United States, they were trying to change that definition as well to expand that to be able to control everything within agriculture. And so that's already happening within the Biden administration. That's all happened in the last couple of weeks. So.
Yeah, it's a lot about changing definitions.
Here's this back. Sorry, I didn't need to take that from you.
Oh, no, that's fine. So there's a lot about changing definitions that's going on. So for example, in the McAlester plan, you know, you guys are the perfect example. It talks about we need to redefine what open space means. You know, anytime you see a redefinition, a reimagining, a reinventing, pause. I mean, if you don't want to, you know, if you're worried about looking a little like an outlier, then just say, pause. Maybe we don't need to redefine. You know, you don't have to go the whole way, oh, this is New World Order, but let's just say, why do we need to redefine that? You know, common meanings and commonly understood definitions are much better when you're operating in a democracy or representative government that depends on the informed citizenry making decisions based on, you know, an accurate assessment of their interests. We need to use regular language, not redefine. So anyway, I think we've got probably a lot of information. I have a Facebook page that, you know, over the summer I'm not quite as busy, but I've got a Facebook page that has a lot of information about Oklahoma, And I've got a YouTube channel. Brian Mayberry is so kind to record these talks, and he edits them. And it's my YouTube channel, which has many Oklahoma talks, is Hearts, like the shape, over hexagons. That's my tag name. And I've got a website, heartsoverhexagons.com. So there's more information there. And then there's a handout with a QR code that has lots of great resources and information on it. So thank you all again so much for your generous donation of time and being here.